Right. Welcome to TwoSun Tuesday. Now it's time to talk about this guy. This is TS118. As you can see, I even have it labeled. I put these little tiny labels on pretty much all of my TwoSun folders now, outside of the slip joints, but I'll get around to it, just so that from a glance I know exactly what everything is. So, this one I haven't had for an incredible amount of time, but it's probably been about a month or so. And when I'd first expressed interest in it and whatnot, I thought it was very similar to the TS135 here. It being, another Max Tkachuk design there. But this thing is quite a bit larger in a lot of dimensions. So, yeah, here's the TS135 and then TS118. So we can see, yeah, it definitely has a taller blade on there. Similar blade shape, but this guy does have, obviously much more of a gentle arcing curve to it. A nice stone wash from the factory, so that's super nice. I like to see that. This one's blade geometry is not exactly fantastic. Quite thick behind the edge. I mean, I've sharpened it down to a 15-degree bevel there, but you can see it's fairly high on there. And this one took me forever to sharpen. And I even did most of the beveling before I got to doing it on the work sharp. So this blade steel, at least on this one in particular, is, well, it's at least difficult to sharpen, and more times than not, at least, that typically leads to a steel that, takes longer to sharpen, means that it takes longer to go dull. So that's certainly something to mention there. Both of these guys are in M390, but yeah, I'll go ahead and move this guy out of the way because it's not the star of the video. Now that I think about it, though, I want to bring it back because thickness on these guys is, you can see this one is definitely larger and thicker. So this is kind of like the smaller brother from a little bit later on. And this one I've actually kind of compared a little bit to the Kubi Dandy that Max had also designed a little bit later on. But I think it might be a little bit more akin to this one. But, I mean, that Dandy is still, 4-inch blade, so it's a little bit longer than this. You can see this has some pretty significant titanium, I'm going to call it a subframe. But, liners, whatever you want to call it. Internal lock bar relief, which is kind of neat there, but, the copper insert there doesn't exactly match up. So that's just a little bit weird. But yeah, this has both internal and external milling there for reasons. I don't know. This one, however, is numbered. This one is number 278. I did not buy this new. At the time, somebody was selling one on a Facebook group at a price that I found really attractive. And so I ended up picking that up. And then I saw them starting to come back onto eBay again. So, they're still available. So that's kind of nice to see. But they're probably not going to be quite as low a number as that. Yeah, it's got a nice action going on there. Something you can notice here is that the back spacer there kind of comes up quite far on there. When it's closed, if you try, you can touch the tip of that blade by dragging it in there. But you really have to dig your finger in to feel it. And yeah, it's not too bad on the top there. You can touch that blade, but not really by a casual finger sweeping by. You really have to try to get that in there. But it's still something to mention there. We do have a little bit of file work going on the other side of that back spacer. Got a very, very thin, interesting clip there. It's not just a single point. It is kind of a flat area there. So this one's pretty easy to get in and out of your pocket. So that's kind of nice. And you can change that to be a left-hand carry if you want. Always nice to see that available, and that it's also, you know, milled out with this kind of ovalized, almost maybe a stop sign kind of a thing there. So yeah, this clip is quite stable in there. No real problems with that at all. We don't have any jimping going on the top here for the flipper tab. Fairly similar to that 135 here. But we do have a little bit of curve there. It's fairly darn easy to deploy. But if your hands are a little bit slippery or something like that, you know, you can probably end up sliding off of it. And it does, you know, stick out a little bit of a ways, being a little pointy there. So it has that pocket pecking kind of sort of thing that can go on if that's something that ends up bothering you. This thing's blade stock is stupid thick, so there's that. That's probably one of the reasons why the geometry on this thing isn't super fantastic. And you can also see that it's basically a high flat saber grind, but it's not a full flat. And it has a fuller here, which is, you know, pretty much for aesthetics and balance. Obviously not something you can really access with it closed for helping in opening it or anything like that. And we have some nice, I won't even call that jumping, I'll call them crenellations up on top there. Fairly smoothed out, but they do give you enough kind of extra friction there. So that's pretty nice. You can see I can get a full 4-finger grip there, and yep, both in relaxed saber, a little bit more gripped up, and definitely in the hammer grip there. Those crenellations might help you a little bit if you were trying to grip it that way, but usually I don't like to have my thumb there. I like to have it curl around the back there, and that doesn't have jumping. That's perfectly fine. You know, it's that's a lot more of a very specialized kind of grip rather than something that everyone's going to do all the time. So. And it's straight back, so obviously holding it backwards, kind of like a paring knife if you're doing any cuts, looping anything through it. Very nice and comfortable there. So, with that being said, besides that TS135, I should probably do a little bit of size comparisons with some other things. So, yeah, here we go with the Paramilitary 2 and the Benchmade 940. You know, obviously that reverse tanto is heavily inspired by the Benchmade, who's kind of, you know, Warren Osborne really popularized that kind of blade shape. This one kind of matches it a little bit, even though it's stranger with its straight and then a little tiny bit of a up kick there. So that almost makes it like a reverse tanto, or I don't know, whatever. But yeah, you can see it's pretty close to both of these. The handle is a little bit longer on the 940, but the blade's a little bit longer on that guy. And I wouldn't mind the handle just being a touch longer on this guy, so that you wouldn't be able to touch that tip of the blade there. But like I said, you have to try pretty actively to poke it, but still, I mean, you know, a couple of sharpenings or whatnot, and it probably won't be a problem for you at all anymore. So next up, we also have the rat number 1, which is you know, larger, and Kalashnikov 74, obviously my donut knife or the Desert Warrior pattern on here. I am actually curious with these guys. As they're in AUS 8, and they're kind of discontinuing that whole line, if they are going to re-come out with these things in D2, that'd be kind of interesting. Don't necessarily know that I would need them, since I already have these things. Just kind of a thought there. So it's a fairly substantial knife. Not a super tall blade, so, you know, a lot of people will prefer that for I guess a little bit more gentlemanly carry. This thing's quite heavy though, so I would probably consider the 135 to be kind of the gentleman version of it, if you will. Have nice lock bar access on this guy though, and it's chamfered on both of those edges. Very easy to get in there. It's still just a little bit weird to me that it's lock bar relief is on both sides. Really doesn't feel like it needed to be on that side, but I don't know. There's got to be a particular reason why they ended up going that route. But let's see. Let's go ahead and do some weights and measures and whatnot on this thing. As I was mentioning, this one is not a light boy. Yeah, 4.2 ounces. Or, yeah, just under 120 grams. Which I don't really have all that much of a problem with, but I'm used to those measurements a little bit more on, the fuller sized knives. And this one is quite a bit thinner, so that is a little bit different with this one, but has to do with definitely the width of those titanium liners there. But we can continue on with a little bit more measurements and whatnot. Let's see, what am I on? I'm on millimeters. So, yeah, this is definitely a 4 millimeter. Just probably a smidge over 4 millimeters in blade stock thickness. That also helps a lot with adding to the weight, especially because this isn't a full flat grind. The balance point on this one is right before the index finger cutout sort of thing. So it's not quite there. It's a little bit further back. It's pretty interesting with, just how much steel is actually out there on this thing. But okay, let's go ahead and do the other measurements, such as blade length. And we got basically Isner's makes no difference, 3.5 inches there. And I'll go ahead and kind of close them up a little bit so we can go ahead and look at that thickness. And yeah, it is definitely a thick boy there. 0.58, let's call it. So fairly thick, which this one is kind of thick, but a lot of that is just the carbon fiber there as the onlays or partial inlays sort of thing. And this one has the copper that's inset as, inlays or whatnot. And it's still quite thick because, yeah. So this thing is just really, really burly. But because of that, you might have some trouble doing some of the sliciest of tasks. Because the blade geometry on this one isn't particularly designed for the most elegant slices. That being said, it still cuts great. It's a knife. It's using great steel, M390. As I said, I really had a difficult time sharpening this one up. And it wasn't the first time this was sharpened, because the person that I did buy it from did use it and sharpen it once or twice. So, yeah, now that I've got all of that sort of stuff out of the way, let's see what's going on under the covers. I don't know why that got super creepy there, but it did nonetheless. Let's see, I have tightened this one quite a bit. There's pivot. I can at least pull that off. Alright, so I think what I ended up doing was probably putting this back together a little bit incorrectly last time that I had it apart. Because this probably shouldn't be the shaft point. It should be the screw. And that's not what happened. You can see that we don't have a D-shaped pivot there. But we can still get this open. We just have to think a little bit more critically about how to maybe go about doing that. But might I also posit that it is currently 3 o'clock in the morning. So maybe all of my critical thinkings are just not going to end up working for me all that well. Right now, at least. Let's see. If I figured I would have at least a little bit of a gap there from loosening up that screw, but it's kind of not looking like it. Trying to add a little bit of lateral pressure there so it'll kind of push that screw out a little bit. The problem is that there's a pin in the back spacer further along than that. That's why I can't just spin the whole thing around. All right, well, you know what I'm going to end up doing real quick here is going ahead and pausing so I can kind of think about this a little bit more in a relaxed fashion and whatnot. And I should be back with this thing opened up. Then I can show you how to put it back together the correct way so you won't run into this dang problem. So, all right, I'll be back. All right, that wasn't all that bad. The first thing that I did was shove the pivot out the other side to take the blade out. And that was nice. And then I could force these open just a little bit more, and that gave me enough lateral strength to unscrew this. So we in there. This actually did have a normal screw in there, but it does look like there's probably a lot of gunk and whatnot. So, well, then I did technically at least have it together right, but that was definitely an instance where Loctite was causing some problems. So you might want to be a little bit careful of that screw in particular. That being said, on the inside here, we have the little tiny pivots with ceramic bearings. They're fairly commonplace for Max Tkachuk designs here, at least with TwoSun. I would like to check out some of his other models with Kubi and whatnot. I just have not been able to do so thus far. But on the inside, we can see we do have at least a little bit of milling kind of going on there. Not skeletonization, but just some pockets in there. And probably putting those in there made it a little bit lighter, but probably also I guess never mind. I was thinking it might have kind of thrown things for a loop a little bit with where the blade balances here rather than up here, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. All that being said, I do really like the nice touches of having a screw mounted internally. Just kind of keeps that nice and clean. Like to see that there. Looks like I have some schmutz in there in the pivot, little area. I don't know what necessarily that is, but it's not there anymore, so hooray. Okay, so we have the little ceramic things there, and we have some flat washer sort of thing here. Yeah, you can see they have a little bit of a line there, but these things don't have a bearing race carved into them, so that's just from, you know, the amount of times that me and the other owner of this has played around with it. So it's interesting. It's milled from both sides, which is definitely a nice thing, because it could have actually been even freaking heavier, and that would have been rather impressive. We can see the blade stop pin, which is actually fairly darn close out there, but still with these titanium things and whatnot, I don't really feel any flex kind of going on like you would on one of the other ones that might have some problems on there, like the TS304 that just basically had that stop pen going into, I think, maybe a little bit of steel and carbon fiber. So, all right. So, I should figure out how all of this stuff ends up connecting back in there so that I can get that correct. That's okay. There we go. Obviously, I'm not going to be pulling out the stud from that side. So that means that that's got to be in the correct location for it beforehand. Making sure I actually have the side of those steel washers that already have that groove in there. And then I can start with that hole back there and kind of go up in there. Alright, so this one, at least for my particular model, was just a little bit more complicated to take apart than a lot of other ones. And it does kind of have to do with the fact that the clip is obscuring a screw point. Not a huge deal if you actually have the time to think critically about how to actually apply a little bit of lateral force there, but you can also worry about trying to get this thing back. So yeah, okay, this is definitely something that might be a little bothersome for me in general, is this whole sort of thing back here. I can easily kind of get that in there, but I'm not really going to bother with it at this particular moment because I'm just going to go ahead and end the video here. It's been going on for probably over 20 minutes now, I think, and yeah, it's sufficient. So this thing is interesting. It's like a larger, bulkier, heavier cousin of the TS135, and it does have some fickle nuances to actually taking apart and reassembling it. But otherwise, very, very similar. Alright, well, as always, I appreciate y'all for watching. I'm going to leave it here. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day, yo.